Chapter 19, Bountiful Harvest. My apologies, Haiden-san. Tessai said in a stoic manner as he stood in the training ground of Naruto's base of operations. His frame was covered with the marks of battle and the frames of his glasses were cracked by whatever had occurred there. Even his mustache needed a touch-up after what had just occurred. It has been quite a while since I've been in an intense battle. I forgot sparring etiquette and used my higher-level Kiddo against you. In his defense, Haiden had monstrous Ryatsu and fought like a savage. Nah. Haiden said in a strained voice in his jigai as he lay on the ground, it was all good. I needed to fight someone tough as an Arrancar, and if you'd pulled punches I might have cut you in half. It's not your fault my jigai got in the way. He looked down at his severed left arm, and chunk of his entire left side missing. You can't kill my human body, this hurts like a motherfucker though. A rather brutal spar between Haiden and Tessai ended with only one overwhelming casualty, Haiden's jigai. He seriously needed to watch where he left that thing around at when he was using his Arrancar form, even if it couldn't technically die. So Ten Kiss-hun, twin sacred return shield, I reject. Haiden then found himself surrounded in the glowing barrier, courtesy of Oraheim, and sighed in relief as his injuries began to quickly heal. I know I hate all you pacifist types and everything, but you're alright. When Jashin-sama rises up and takes this world I'll see what I can do to keep you alive, girl. Thank you, Haiden. Apparently Oraheim saw that as a perfectly feasible way of someone saying thank you to her. If anything, hanging around while Haiden picked fights with others got her tons of practice at healing, because he would leave his jigai around haphazardly and it would get annihilated, thus requiring someone to fix it so that he could use it and move around after he was done fighting. Yeah, Haiden definitely liked getting his body put back together this way. Oraheim was faster than Kakuzu was unless he was really messed up. She was way nicer about it when she patched him up, and of course the view that he got was immaculate. Even a surly jerk like him had to admit that a pretty girl was way better to look at than an old guy in a mask. Whatever Uzumaki is paying you he needs to pay you more because this healing thing you do is the best I've ever seen. Oraheim's face heated prettily at being complimented, especially by someone with such a normally poor disposition like Haiden. Though, the fact that his shoulder was now reattached to his torso by way of her doing probably had something to do with it. It's practice, I guess. She said before laughing sheepishly. She was damn sure getting a lot of it, that much was for certain. At hearing that from her, Haiden gave her a very feral grin. Well, if that's the case then I'll just have to make sure that you get more of it, right? She could just put him right back together anyway. All Oraheim could do was give him a nervous smile, because she didn't like the sound of that whatsoever. Meanwhile there was work to be done elsewhere in the training area that was quite busy on this day. Gaara in his stood impassively as another of Chad's energy blasts bounced off of his Shikaku look-alike shield. Once again barely anything chipped off of the tightly compacted material but did nothing to the overall structural integrity of it. You have to do better than that, Sato-san. Gaara said calmly. Chad stood panting as he stared down the tanuki-looking shield directly in his path. He knew he had put absolutely everything he had into that last blast, so why was it still looking pristine? He saw pieces of it fly away. Little did he know, Gaara was repeatedly reinforcing the shield after every attack Chad gave it. The smoke and dust kicked up from every blast obscured Chad's vision and allowed Gaara to pull up more minerals from the ground to use to reform parts of the shield. Gaara wanted Chad to smash it in one hit/blast though, instead of picking away at it, since if he could do that, there probably wasn't anything he couldn't destroy. It's impossible, Chad thought to himself as he let the armor around his right arm fade, his exhaustion evident by this point. He had been going at trying to destroy Gaara's shield since he exited school that day. It had been like that every day since they had begun to train together. What on earth is that thing made of? Steel? Gaara could see the exhaustion in Chad, having fired nothing but full-powered blasts from his arm ever since the training session had begun, now being well after 9 p.m. And then there was the matter of the fact that the younger members of the little group had homework and the like to take care of. I think we should take a break, Gaara said, not leaving room for any argument as he then disappeared in a sand-based shunshin. He had homework to do as well. Front or not, Gaara was not about to look bad in a public forum for being stupid, like Naruto did by not showing up, sleeping in classes, and not doing homework. Somehow Naruto was still passing, and simultaneously obliterating world history and geography classes. Speaking of Naruto as well, he was working up quite a sweat in a mock battle with Yoruichi, both of them moving fast enough to avoid being flat out seen by anyone that wasn't used to moving that fast themselves. They would trade strikes in the air and then back away, until Naruto decided to push forward as the aggressor and try to chase Yuruchi down, an attempt to wear her down that was very slow going. Someone's angry. Yuruchi jibed as she hopped backwards and came to a stop just as a fist from Naruto smashed into the ground. Someone's very angry. Is the mission really that bad? Naruto grumbled to himself as he stood up and shook the gravel off of his fist. This isn't a mission. Naruto stated, bouncing on his toes to stay loose, we're on watchdog status. We were doing that before any of this happened at all, now we just have Jigakuchu, hell butterflies, to take care of. Don't forget that we're to take in another group of Shinigami to keep the Siriidii up to date on what's happening in the world of the living. Yuruchi said informatively before ducking a kunai thrown directly at her in response, so that's the thing that you're really pissed off about. She said in a eureka moment. I am not running a goddamned boarding house. Naruto yelled before again rushing Yuruchi swiftly, forcing her to move just as quickly to avoid being overtaken in his attack. Sick of retreating, Yuruchi stopped running and threw a hard punch that met Naruto's own in a heavy smash of fists. We're getting paid way more than this is worth, Naruto. She said as she ignored the thought that she might have broken her hand in that ill-advised clash, so when the Shinigami representatives show up I want you to be good. Be good? I'm the fucking boss around here. Naruto exclaimed, spinning in a grandiose manner, I'll blow this entire base to bits if I feel like it. It's not like it's lined with sekiseki or something. He stopped spinning in time to block a Yuruchi flying kick that sent him sliding back 100 feet away. Do you think we could get sekiseki in here? That last idea actually sounds useful. Yuruchi sprang back off of Naruto's block and smirked at watching him shake his arms out. She might have cracked the bones in them as hard as she kicked him. Nope, can't bring it through any portal. All we've got here is the stuff you humans came up with over the last few thousands of years. She finished with a grin. Cocky, aren't we? Naruto quipped as he could already feel his bones starting to slowly heal. Before he could initiate another attack, a voice stopped him. Naruto-sensei, how do I pop this damn water balloon? Tatsuki shouted across the training room, holding said water balloon in one hand. Spinning the water doesn't work. This was an extremely troublesome technique to get down, but the Rasengan was sure to be worth it in the end. It was definitely the strongest fighting technique she ever had the opportunity to learn. Patience was not her strong suit though. Naruto took his eyes off of Yuruchi to address his student who had interrupted his fight. Yes, it will. You're just doing it wrong. He shouted back. Then tell me how to do it right. Tatsuki said with a snarl in her voice. In the blink of an eye, Naruto was right in front of her with a frown on his face, surprising her and making her take a step back as he stared at her. Show me. Naruto said, before grunting and suddenly blocking another flying kick from Yuruchi. Give me a second, Yuruchi-chan, damn. I'm trying to teach here. Yuruchi merely chuckled and jumped back from her attempted surprise attack to land in a crouch, a predatory look in her eyes as if she was looking for another sneak opening. You never said timeout. She more or less purred. But even if he had indeed said timeout, she wouldn't have listened anyway. Naruto kept an eye on Yuruchi but was still watching Tatsuki as she tried to pop the balloon by spinning the water in it with her chakra. He could see the water only churning in one direction and took the balloon from her. Pay attention because I'm only doing this one more time. What's the difference between when you do it and when I do it? He asked before spinning the water with his chakra, quickly bursting the balloon. Tatsuki growled slightly when the water from the balloon splashed on her. It looked like the water was churning instead of just sloshing around when I did it. Am I supposed to spin the water in more than one direction? She asked as she walked away to a nearby pile of water balloons to get a new one. Naruto grinned at the fact that she picked up on what to do and was about to open his mouth when he sensed Yuruchi again and ducked a swinging kick aimed at his head. Alright, that's it. Jin-tun, Mankabushi, swift release, 10,000 fists. Naruto leapt at Yuruchi and threw punches so fast she couldn't even see them. Wow! She thought as Naruto's punches actually sent her in a full retreat. Yuruchi could feel her forearms taking all of the punishment from the repeated strikes that she swore could pulverize rock into pebbles. That's a new one. Meanwhile though, Tatsuki was lamenting the loss of one-on-one time with her new and very powerful mentor and was none too happy about it. Can you two stop playing around for 5 minutes so I can get some help here? She wished she was fast enough to chase them down, but Naruto didn't teach her how to do that yet. She couldn't even see Naruto or Yuruchi most of the time and she didn't ever think she'd be that fast. Pop the goddamn balloon. Naruto yelled, splitting his attention between his student and his opponent. What else do you want me to say or do? I'm in a fight here, damn it. Naruto turned back to Yoruichi fully to find her kneeling down with both hands on the ground, a grin firmly on her face. And what do you think your dash? Bakudu number 21, Sekienten, Way of Binding number 21, Red Smoke Escape. From Yoruichi's hands on the ground, a massive plume of red smoke burst up, engulfing herself and Naruto. After a moment the smoke cleared and revealed Naruto in a ready stance all by himself without Yoruichi anywhere in sight. Damn it! Naruto muttered to himself, scratching his whisker marks. Sensing Yoruichi's Ryatsu was always a pain and he didn't want to get caught off guard in another sneak attack, if she was even still there at all. There was always a chance that she had just gotten bored and left altogether. Still, free time was free time, and with that he turned towards Tatsuki. Now pop the balloon and I'm not answering another question until you do. I'm not here to spoon feed you the way to do things. Tatsuki stared at him and then at the balloon in her hand before glaring at it in focus as the water started to churn. Once again, Naruto had to say that her control was way better than his when he took to learning the Rasengan because she only needed one hand to begin the process of moving the water in multiple directions. After a few seconds the balloon popped, putting a look of elation on Tatsuki's face as she had finally gotten the step down. I did it. It only took a few days. She was about to break into a full-on celebration when she caught a rubber ball that was thrown right at her. What the hell is this now? Pop that. Naruto said, amused at how he had cut off her little celebration. He could see why Jiraiya used to do it to him all the time when he thought he had accomplished something. It was actually kind of hilarious to see her expression change. It's not a water balloon this time, it's a rubber ball. They make the rubber out of lower quality stuff than when I had to do this step, so it should actually be easier for you to pop it. He stifled a laugh when the look of concentration on her face bore no fruit by way of the ball popping. Tatsuki tried spinning the chakra in the ball in a similar way, getting no positive reaction from the orb. How am I supposed to pop this thing? Do I spin my chakra the other way? What's the trick this time? Power. Naruto answered her question in a straightforward manner. Your chakra needs to be as intense as you can make it to pop the ball. You've got to do it in a completely different way this time to learn how to make the Rasengan strong enough to do actual damage to the stuff you hit with it. Getting the point, Tatsuki went back to focusing on the rubber ball in her hand, grunting loudly in exertion as she tried to will her chakra to burst the ball from the inside. Naruto began escorting Tatsuki back over to the others as it was time to shoo the high school students on home. That's the way, Tatsuki-chan. Bully that chakra out. Now it was time to see how long it took her to get this step down. XXX. The next day, Karakura High School. In an empty classroom, Naruto, Gaara, Orihime, Tatsuki, Chad, and Yuryu sat down to listen to what the Quincy of the group had to say about what he had recently found and had tried to take to Urahara and had failed. You found people with their souls sucked out, and couldn't sense anything else? Chad asked, not seeing how those two things could have gone together. If it was an Arrancar we could sense them, couldn't we? The surefire advantage they had was that they weren't going to be snuck up on by the Arrancar. Naruto grimaced at the thought. He was no stranger to espionage, but he figured that he had a handle on making sure that he could feel the Arrancar in order to prevent any sneak attacks. But this didn't seem like an Arrancar thing. Why would they attract even the slightest amount of attention by killing normal people if they were really trying to stay hidden in their infiltration of Karakura town? When is Ichigo coming back anyway? Tatsuki asked, trying to interject in the conversation as she was still trying to pop the rubber ball in her hand. He's been gone for more than a week. It wasn't nearly as long as being gone for the entire summer break, but a week was still a week and that was quite a while to go without hearing from someone. Naruto addressed this fact. He's still training with the people me and Urahara set him up with, but I'm thinking I might have to spring him soon. Me and Urahara can oversee the rest of his training on our own. Now don't worry about his training, worry about your own. Pop that ball, damn it. He demanded, getting Tatsuki to grumble and curse under her breath at him. According to the Vizards, Ichigo had managed to obtain control over his hollow. Now it was just a matter of him learning how to fight and keep the mask that represented his hollow powers on his face to augment his already formidable abilities. Right now all he could do was keep it on for only a handful of seconds. So theoretically he could go and get Ichigo and bring him back to normal living, well, as normal as things got for Ichigo anyway. Still, he was not feeling up to dealing with getting bitched out by Shinji or Hiyori. It would probably be best to send a clone if he decided to get Ichigo back. The way things sounded, Orihime didn't necessarily like the thought of fighting someone without the entire crew present and assembled, so to speak. "So, what are we going to do?" she asked rather meekly. It was like a war room, except it was just a classroom. "Ichigo is fine on his own," Gaara insisted calmly. "He is with those that are training him. They are most certainly not weak, thus this incident won't touch them." Naruto stroked his chin and thought, "Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but Wonder Boy needs more seasoning. Besides, we need to see what he's gotten out of all of his training anyway. Once we know what we're dealing with, I'm calling him back." There was no need to yank him out of his current training regiment prematurely before they even knew what they were facing. Gaara then rocketed out another immediate question: "You going to call the Siriidii?" "Fuck no." Naruto replied instantly, "They're already sending people. Why would I call them now? It's not like telling Yamamoto Gigi that this is happening and we don't what exactly this is would make them send anyone any faster." He was going to save some face here and stay on top of the situation. Equilibrium was not going to look like they didn't know what they were doing only days after being recognized as a significant force by the Siriidii. Yuryu frowned deeply as he tried to brainstorm. "We can't sense them, well, at least I can't. Not until I felt a little spike of Ryatsu." He rubbed the bridge of his nose under his glasses. "When I arrived, I found the bodies that had lost their souls." It was clear that he was relenting over the loss of his powers, even though there was nothing he could really do about that fact. There had to be a way to find out just what was going on and to locate the culprit immediately. His sensing skills weren't very strong to search for things over a distance until he took the time to use Sage MO. Naruto immediately stood up and walked out of the room, getting everyone's attention at how abrupt the action was. "Where are you going, Naruto?" Chad asked, thinking that there might be some trouble that needed to be handled. "To go be your living radar system." Naruto snapped as he reached the door just when the teacher opened it back up to come inside, ready to continue class. "Uzumaki-san, the lunch period is almost over," she said with her hands on her hips. "Where do you think you're going?" Blinking at the woman blocking his path, Naruto set his hands on her shoulders and calmly yet swiftly switched their positions, with him standing in the doorway and her standing in the classroom. "Bathroom?" "Yeah, I'm going to the bathroom for this stomach virus I caught. You don't want me anywhere near here for that, so." He then took off down the hall in a rush. Later, the teacher let out a sigh as she looked down the hall where she swore she could see scuff marks from the rubber soles on Naruto's shoes lining the floor where he ran. "I swear I have the strangest students in my class. First Kurosaki running off at the drop of a hat, and then Uzumaki never shows up and leaves at a whim. XXX. Vizard's hideout, training ground. Come on, you dumbass." Hiyori yelled as an incoming attack from Ichigo was easily defended. Her reason for being upset was his slow-moving growth when it came to using his hollow mask. 11 seconds just isn't going to cut it in an actual fight. She shouted as she delivered a kick to Ichigo's face to drive the point home. Ichigo got back to his feet and glared, scuff marks all over his face from the kick he had just taken. "I know that," he shouted back as he rubbed his face. Why did all of the short people in his life find it so necessary to inflict copious amounts of gratuitous violence on him? First Rukia and now Hiyori. "I'm trying to hold it as best as I can, so shut up and let me work." Hiyori gave him a deadpan look before bringing her hand up to her face, her own mask with the prominent horn on the forehead taking form. "Well, if you still want to get your ass kicked, that's just fine with me," she said in her slightly distorted voice, warped by the power of the hollow flowing through her. "Bring it on." With that welcome invitation, Ichigo formed his own mask and leapt back at her with a yell of malicious intent. Meanwhile, like usual, the other Vizards were hanging out to the side, not paying much attention, if any at all, to the current fight going on. 11 seconds is a shoddy amount of time to keep the mask on for, Kensei remarked to himself as he was the only one really paying attention to Ichigo and Hiyori's little scrap. I mean, first of all the guy took longer than Hiyori to get his hollow under control, and now this. Shinji shrugged upon hearing his comrade's complaints. Hey, at least he's not a dud. He pulled it off in the end, didn't he? He did agree though. 11 seconds was hilariously bad. That didn't mean that there wasn't room for improvement though, and Ichigo certainly was impressive. Wait, do we have to pay Naruto? Because he said that we owed him, but he never said what we owed him. Ro sat off, tuning his guitar calmly. Are you kidding? He said with a laugh, none of us have money. What are we going to pay him with, all of the useless stuff we've got laying around the place? Lisa shook her head as she read a small orange book intently. If we don't pay him somehow, then Naruto's going to get us back. Shinji laughed loudly at the idea of Naruto getting them back. Get us back? How in the hell would he ever pull that one off? There's a barrier over the entire hideout and we never really leave. Good luck with that. Love rubbed his stubbly chin as he thought about what was being said. Well, Naruto is thousands of years old and he's strong. Really strong. We actually don't even know how strong he is, but that's not even really important. He's like an old man, and old men are wily and conniving. Even if he doesn't try to beat us up, which would be stupid trying to do that to all of us at once. Everyone in earshot nodded in agreement. That indeed would have been very stupid, but even if he doesn't try that, I still think he could do something to get us back because he keeps saying that he doesn't work for free. We're friends with Fishcake though. Mashiro interjected brightly, don't we get some kind of friend discount for his services, or even better a freebie? Love shook his spiky afroed head firmly. Naruto says, if you want a handout call the United Nations, because I don't fight for free. So no, he doesn't do freebies, unless we really need it. And they certainly didn't need his help to get Ichigo, it was just more convenient that way. Maybe we can pay him in installments? XXX. Late evening, with Naruto. Karakura town needs skyscrapers. Naruto remarked to himself offhandedly. He was seated in a meditative position atop the highest building in town that he could find, which coincidentally wasn't that high at all. Several stories wasn't nearly high enough for him to get a good vantage position from. If he had been higher he could have easily sensed the slightest disturbance of energy amongst all of the people in town. Now he had to focus intensely to distinguish between the unfamiliar and minute signatures of all of the townspeople assaulting his senses. He could clearly feel two particular signatures that were moving towards him rapidly. Still, he didn't stand up and prepare to defend himself because both signatures had a hint of familiarity. Both of them, though he didn't know who they were, felt similar to two other people that he did in fact know quite well. So you're the one producing that strange ryatsu that I've been feeling around Karakura town for months. A man wearing a plain gray suit with a light blue undershirt and tie adorned with blue crosses on it said in a cool manner from behind Naruto. He had silver hair and brown eyes along with a pair of glasses on his face. You're not a Shinigami, but I don't particularly know what you are. The way he spoke was in a manner that Naruto found similar to Yuryu, and his energy felt like a Quincy, also like Yuryu since he was the only Quincy Naruto knew anyway. That's me, Uzumaki Naruto, at your service. Naruto said, still sitting in meditative position, eyes shut to help him feel the energy around Karakura town. Are you Yuryu's dad? It's nice to meet you. He said in an honestly pleasant manner. I'd get up to shake your hand and introduce myself the right way, but I'm kind of on the lookout for something right now. Yuryu's father simply stared at Naruto's back with his arms crossed. You're radiating energy like a living beacon. The same energy I felt around Yuryu repeatedly. You're correct, I am Yuryu's father. I am Ishida Ryukin. He looked over to the side and paused for the moment, and I'm apparently not the only person that wishes to have words with you. He seemed to be waiting for something, and that something appeared moments later in a blur right next to Ryukin on the rooftop. It was a man wearing a Shinigami uniform, but he had a captain's Haori attached to the back of a small piece of armor on his left shoulder. He was a tall man with spiky black hair and brown eyes. He had a stubble beard and was looking between Naruto and Ryukin. You're late, Ishin. Ryukin said matter-of-factly. If he had wanted to leave and if I weren't here he could have disappeared before you managed to make it from your clinic. Ishin let out a slight growl. Well, excuse me, some of us have kids that we don't need knowing that we do this, so I had to make my own opening. He then turned his attention to Naruto. I felt your signature around Ichigo quite a bit since right before the summer began. It's not really my style to pry into my son's life and all of that, but I don't really know a thing about you. And you're very strong, so forgive me if I don't feel safe leaving Ichigo in your hands. Naruto grinned without moving otherwise, not that they could even see it. I'd like to say that I'm Ichigo's boss, but since he hasn't really done anything for me yet I can't. Same for Yuryu, but he actually has done some work for me. Even without his powers the guy keeps his ear to the ground just in case. Boss? Ishin said questioningly. Boss for what? Ichigo isn't with the Siriidii unless you count the substitute Shinigami thing, which I don't. Ryukin's eyes hardened almost unnoticeably at hearing the words Siriidii used in conjuncture of anything to do with his son. Yuryu knows not to show his back to anyone having anything to do with Shinigami. His own mistake in going there this summer and losing his powers was his choice, however. Letting out a sigh, Naruto decided that it was time to explain to the parents what was going on. What a bother, I am a part of a group that is tasked with watching over this neck of the world of the living. I'm just a normal human being, that's not really normal at all. Just like Ichigo and Yuryu's friends, only not anything like any of them at all. He then realized how contradictory that sounded. Does any of that make sense? Ishin nodded stiffly. You're not a soul, you're a living being. And you're like those other children that are touched with powers, only you're not touched, everything you're capable of is all yours. Close enough. Naruto replied earnestly, but I pay Yuryu for him working with me, and I'll pay Ichigo too if he ever starts. We're a really small group. You must be hurting for help if you believe my son is a useful commodity to your efforts. Ryukin said succinctly, without his powers he's just a sitting duck waiting to be taken down. He shouldn't be meddling in the affairs of the dead. Nothing good comes of it. He should focus on protecting the living if he feels he should protect anything. Nothing's going to happen to Yuryu. Naruto said determinedly, powers or not. He then switched gears, and who's to say he can't do both? I've been doing one for years, as far as I'm concerned protecting the other isn't that different from one, it's just weirder. And that wasn't even by very much in Naruto's opinion. Nothing he had seen since he had begun to deal with the dead had been that far out of his realm of normalcy thus far. Ishin stepped forward, so does that mean you know where Ichigo happens to be right now? Ichigo's training with some friends of mine, but I'm about to get him and bring him back any day now. Naruto felt alright with telling Ishin this because he didn't exactly seem to be a Siriidai-sanctioned Shinigami either. Besides, he was the kid's dad, there wasn't an issue of telling him that much since he couldn't find the visors without already knowing where to look. He'll be back, sulking all over your house in no time. Naruto assured Ishin, until then Khan's filling in for him. A nod that Naruto couldn't see came from Ishin, the mod soul inside of his body. I know. At that moment, Naruto's eyes snapped open, revealing the telltale eyes of Sage Mode to finally take in the low light of the nearly set sun, and he jumped to his feet, nearly alarming Ishin who had been closest to him. I'd love to talk to you guys some more, but I have to go. I've got a hunt to get to. Sorry. He said before running towards the edge of the building and jumping off without fanfare. This left the two older men standing atop the building alone. Ryukin was the first to comment, that's one strange young man. He then saw Ishin shaking his head. What the matter with you? He asked as he calmly placed a cigarette in his mouth. There's nothing young about that guy. Ishin said with a slight chuckle, that Ryatsu is grizzled. No young man or young anything has an aura like that. XXX. Urahara shop, early nightfall. I don't see how this is a good idea. Haiden said abruptly as he sat at Urahara's table, staring up at what he had come over to check out in the stead of Yoruichi, who was manning the base waiting for the arrival of the Shinigami meant to stay with them for the time being, and Naruto, who was off playing early warning radar in town. He thought it would have something to do with Nell, but the childlike Arrancar was as normal as ever, and to make things annoying for Haiden, she was no longer afraid of him since by now she knew he would not hurt her, thus he was now in playmate realm as far as she was concerned. Aren't those things illegal? He asked, trying to ignore Nell climbing up his back as he pointed at the three figures standing behind Urahara. Opening his fan in amusement to Haiden's reaction, Urahara let out a chuckle. Well, check out the big brain on Haiden. I guess Naruto or Yoruichi drilled into your head what was legal and illegal in this world to make sure you didn't do something you shouldn't. Haiden grumbled in response, but Urahara simply went ahead with why he called someone from Naruto's base to come over, say hello to Noba, Kurudo, and Ririn. Mod souls that I've created. He also did not acknowledge that yes, they were illegal by the standards of the Soul Society. Noba seemed to be a young man wearing a fur coat and a blue undersuit that went up into a zippered mask that was open to reveal red bangs of his hair and blue eyes. On his back he had a blue shield. Kurudo was a man that had glasses, a small mustache, and long hair that was half blonde and half black. He wore a gray tie and top hat and had on a multicolored suit that was gray, black, and red in places. Ririn was a small young woman with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She wore a long pink coat with fur trimming the edges and over that a black cloak of some sort along with high red boots. Haiden just stared at them dryly, still ignoring Nell, who was marveling at his slick-backed hair at the moment. Yeah. I don't say hello unless I'm saying, hello, I'm about to kill you. So I'm not going to be doing that shit. Why am I here, damn it? They weren't even feeding him, so he wasn't getting anything out of this trip. He really was Naruto's gopher, wasn't he? He thought he should have been more upset over that fact than he actually was. What a brute. Kuruto said before paling slightly when Haiden turned his head towards him to give him the collected killer blank stare. We are meant to help you. He managed to stammer out through Haiden's unintentional, killing intent. Haiden cocked an eyebrow. Help us what? He asked, finally prying Nell off of his head and holding her in front of his face. Stop. He said sternly, only getting an amused laugh from the small girl. He rolled his eyes and put Nell down before turning his attention back to the new people he hadn't met yet. But yeah, what do we need help with? Urahara pointed right at Haiden. You completely suck at sensing anything less than the most blunt outpouring of energy. He could sense Haiden's Ryatsu spike angrily at the blunt declaration. You know it's true. That's not going to work because of the very special ratio that constitutes your new enemy's energy. It's almost like they're not using any at all. You could never find it. Fuck you. Haiden said dully, but he knew that was true. We have new enemies? What happened to the Arrancar of that Aizen jerk that we fought not too long ago? His tone switched to one of excitement. New enemies meant he would probably get to fight. Fighting meant he might get to kill someone other than the drone-like hollows that he usually tore apart whenever he decided to go to Hueco Mundo. Urahara shrugged and scratched his head underneath his hat. They haven't tried anything since the last attack. We can feel when a Garganta is torn into the world of the living. Well, nothing like that has happened this time. This is a completely new enemy. Ririn said before pointing to herself, a confident smile on her face. Luckily we can locate the ones that you're supposed to be looking for now easily. So suffice it to say, you'd be lost without us. Haiden just stared them all down blankly before grabbing Nell and putting her on his shoulder. Downstairs now. Let's see how lost I'd be without once I see what use you three are. And with that, Haiden marched downstairs taking Nell along for the ride. Why he did so he had no idea, but it seemed like a good idea. Pay close attention, kid. He said to Nell, you're about to see Haiden Ajisen kick some upstart ass. Once he arrived downstairs however he paused mid-step, seeing that Ririn, Noba, and Urahara were all down there, seemingly waiting on them. Haiden looked back at the ladder he had just climbed down and over at the Mod Souls, fighting the urge to ask them how the hell they got down there so fast. He opened his mouth to speak when he heard a familiar voice speak behind him that froze him cold. Haiden, I give you a job to do and then I find you picking a fight when I come to check up on you. Haiden turned around to see the form of Yoruchi giving him a stern look. What do you have to say for yourself? Haiden was prepared to defend himself verbally but stopped and simply stared at Yoruchi before placing Nell on the ground. I say that you're not Yoruchi. He yelled as he pulled his cylinder from around his neck and extended it to its full pike form to launch himself at Yoruchi. Just as his feet left the ground from his direct attack, a red field appeared behind Yoruchi, with Noba inside of it. The Yoruchi copycat jumped inside, forcing Haiden's brazen attack to miss. Noba and the copy of Yoruchi wound up standing back with Ririn and Urahara, the red field from before having dissipated from their previous use. Haiden scoffed at his miss without turning back around to face them. I'm slower in my Jigai. Let's see you try that again. He said as he stabbed himself with his pike and ejected his soul from the body, leaving him in his Arrancar form. As he turned around to face off with the three Mod Souls he was slightly taken aback as the normal barren, mountainous training ground was no longer in view. Instead he found himself standing inside of what looked to be the inner workings of a large clock. He quickly drew his scythe and held it at the ready, licking his lips in anticipation. In a speedy motion, the body of the Yoruchi copy appeared behind Haiden, but Haiden merely turned and blocked with his scythe, grinning madly as he did so. Yeah, you're not Yoruchi. You're fast, but not Yoruchi fast. And that kick would have at least made me move if it had actually been her. Nice try though. He said, shoving the fake Yoruchi off. You don't fight like her either. The Yoruchi copy smirked deviously. How'd you know I wasn't Yoruchi-san before we even really fought? Yoruchi wouldn't have said anything to me first if she was really upset with what I did. Haiden said with a deadpan expression. She would have kicked the shit out of me first, then she would have said something. Now please let me bifurcate you in peace. Haiden said before vanishing with a low boom, a sign of his use of Sonido. Yoruchi seemed to sweat slightly when Haiden began to move, and the follow-up attempt to keep up with him nearly failed because as Haiden said, this person wasn't as fast as the real Yoruchi. It wasn't even close, and Haiden's scythe came close to cutting the enemy in two. Noba. The fake Yoruchi called out as Haiden cocked his fist back, allowing red energy to form around it. Bala, hollow bullet. Haiden launched the projectile energy attack just as Noba landed in front of the false Yoruchi and created another red field to block the attack from hitting both of them. Hayden's bala flew into the field and disappeared right before he felt something strike him in his back and explode, knocking him to the ground on his face. He pulled himself up to see Noba standing in front of what used to be a copy of Yaruchi, now Karuto. What the hell? This guy is way too strong for us. Karuto said, looking at Hayden warily. I can't copy enough of what Yaruchi-san can do to be a threat to him in an actual fight. I'm glad you realize that. Hayden said in a seething voice, angry that somehow his own bala wound up being fired at himself. Now please die for me. Hayden held up one hand in a half-tiger seal and formed a purple zero in his other hand, prepared to just fire and obliterate them the second one of them made a wrong move. Karuto took a step back. Noba, redirect that would you? Noba spoke his first words as the masked mod soul looked at Hayden's energy blast warily. I'm not sure I can. Bakudu number 61, Rikujukuru, way of binding number 61, 6 rods prison of light. 6 yellow beams of light slammed into Hayden's body on all sides and froze him in place. Oh goddammit. Not again. Let me out, Urahara, or you're next. I can't let you blow the mod souls to hell, Hayden. Urahara said, walking into sight from seemingly nowhere. You can let the illusion fall now, Ririn. At his request, the scene changed and returned back to the barren training ground it had been in the first place. Ririn then popped up from behind a rock. Oh, and I was just about to give that Hayden a hit he'd never forget, she said as she moved over to the amassed mod souls, Shinigami scientist, and trapped Arankar. Urahara let go of the fucking kiddo. Hayden snapped again. Oh, you're so lucky I can't go resurrection on your ass without tipping off the Shinigami, because there's no way in hell this flimsy shit would hold me then. Just being pissed wasn't a good enough reason to unload his full power as if it were a toy. His Ryatsu wasn't exactly subtle even in his normal Arankar form. Ignoring Hayden's ranting, Urahara gestured to the mod souls. Well, at least now you've seen that they're not just for sensing your new enemies. Noba can teleport anywhere he wants and can even teleport ranged attacks like your bala. Karuto can shapeshift into any person's appearance and can take on their voice. He can even mimic some of their abilities to use in combat. Ririn can make illusions to fool opponents. She was just a little nervous to do anything more than change the battlefield appearance after you let your Ryatsu loose. I wasn't scared or anything. Ririn said in a manner of flimsy defense. I just thought that Noba and Karuto were better suited to handle you, that's all. Just as she said that, Urahara dropped his kiddo's hold over Hayden and the Arankar appeared in front of Ririn, leaning down to get in her face, stopping her statement in her tracks. Boo! Hayden said plainly, getting a satisfied look on his face when Ririn shrieked and jumped back behind Urahara. He let out a cruel chuckle and looked at Urahara. How do you keep making stuff like this? He asked. You must be burning through your pay to afford what you need. Not as much as you'd think. Urahara said with a laugh before getting somewhat serious, especially since I actually know what we're up against with this new threat Yuryu found. I want you to bring these guys to Yaruchi at your base and tell her that we've got bounce to deal with. XXX. With Naruto. Underneath a darkened bridge, Naruto stared down at the body of a person with their soul drained, just like Yuryu said. If he hadn't been in sage mode, thus making him extra sensitive towards the energy of all living creatures that he could sense, he would never had felt the tiny amount of a normal person's spirit begin to vanish. He was too late to save the person though, as he hadn't been anywhere near the signature when it began to drop off. Backing away from the deceased civilian, Naruto ran a hand through his hair and let out a sigh that turned into a growl before he began to walk back onto the streets from under the bridge. He was still dressed in his school garb since he hadn't gone back to base before taking up his position sitting and waiting on some suspicious activity to take place. I've got to get a handle on this quick. There's no way I can let this kind of thing keep happening as long as I'm here to do something about it. Taking care of things like this were the entire reason he was able to accept his own existence, thus it irked him intensely that people were still dying around him. As he continued to walk onwards aimlessly, wondering if he should try again to locate an attack with Sage Mode, a soft song began to fill his mind. It was a rather calming one that he hadn't heard for hundreds of years, one that he remembered particularly liking, thus he allowed himself to let his mind drift if only for a moment. A moment turned out to be far longer than he thought, as when he regained his bearings Naruto found himself standing out in front of an abandoned hospital, only one single person in the vicinity standing in front of him. Damn Genjutsu. I fucking hate being hypnotized. He thought to himself, his muscles tensing in response to the sight of the shadowy figure standing in front of him. Even though whatever had happened to him wasn't genjutsu, it didn't change the fact that whatever had happened had been akin to it, and he despised the indirect arts of combat. Needless to say, after being suckered along for what he had presumed to be miles, Naruto was ready for a fight. The shadowy figure slowly walked forward into the moonlight and Naruto's sight. It was a woman with brown hair, brown eyes, and red lipstick. She was very attractive, but Naruto didn't care much about looks when someone was about to attack him. She wore an olive-colored collared shirt and a red tie with a brown vest over it, as well as black pants and shoes. On her right hand was silver bracelet, and on her left hand was a silver claw on her middle finger. The thing was, though, that she was looking at Naruto as if she had seen a ghost. Her face was almost pale at the sight of him and her mouth was slightly agape in shock. She then schooled her features when she realized that Naruto was still set for battle. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said with a slight laugh, though her face was far from amused. "Maybe I do, maybe I don't," Naruto said, ready for action and debating the merits of rushing in or getting his distance depending on how this person fought. "I've been around for a while, so refresh my memory." "Yes, quite a while," the woman said quietly before narrowing her eyes in a glare on him. "Try around 250 years. Namikaze Naruto," she spat spitefully. Naruto's eyes snapped wide open at hearing that name used. He had repeatedly changed his name throughout his life, and that had been the one he had kept for the longest time. He hadn't gone by that name since it became a habit for international records to be kept, thus he began switching between more diverse names than his mother and father's surnames. But 250 years? Who the hell did he know 250 years ago that would actually be alive and remember who he was? No, forgetting that, if this woman knew him 250 years ago, then how on earth was she even alive in the first place? He wasn't even able to legitimately see complete souls until around 50 or 60 years ago, so it wasn't that, and this was a living, breathing woman, which meant that she was just that back then. How the hell does anyone that knows who I am exist for that long? Naruto thought to himself before speaking. "How do you know that name, and who are you? Why are you attacking people? I thought you were dead. At first I thought there was no way it was really you," the woman said lowly, blatantly ignoring his questions, "and then I thought that I was currently standing in front of a strong descendant. But no, I don't know how, but you're actually him. You're Naruto. And yet you're not a Bount, you're a sage, correct? Am I still right about that?" Naruto had no clue what a Bount was, but it was now abundantly clear that this lady knew who he was. "Hey! Answer my questions!" he demanded heatedly. The woman calmly closed her eyes, ignoring Naruto's outburst. "If you don't remember my face, then I doubt you remember my name, but I'll give it to you anyway before I send you to hell for abandoning me, Naruto. My name is Yoshino, Soma Yoshino." At that, Naruto started racking his brain trying to think of anyone named Yoshino that would have any reason to know who he was, but he was drawing a blank. Unfortunately for him, he was given no more time to ponder the identity of the woman that knew him as she drew her single-finger claw to her bracelet with a hateful look in her eyes. "Sage Dike, Gerda, show yourself, Gerda." The moment she scraped her bracelet with the claw and formed a spark in doing so, a fire formed in an arc above her head before rapidly spreading all over the area. A humanoid figure of fire and magma appeared in front of Yoshino with fire for hands below its forearms and fire for legs beneath the knee area. Having dealt with Yamamoto Zanpakuto, Naruto wasn't that far removed from dealing with oppressive heat, but even still the flames from whatever Yoshino had just done were making him sweat. "Who the hell are you, Yoshino?" Naruto thought to himself right before the fire construct rushed at him to attack. Something was starting to nag at him about the face of the woman that was opposing him though. "And what are you not telling me that I should know?"